bop diddy bop bop bop. We're back. Yeah, things get fucking weirder and weirder, don't they, boys and girls? But thankfully, it's always 4:20 at my house, no matter what time it really is. I have to go with that. But before I get to fucking whatever, let's check out today's program, which is going to cover something I found interesting. Around 1972, a film was made called Death Dream, or Dead of Night, or The Night Andy Came Home. Directed by Bob Clark of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. I believe it was Tom Savini's first makeup job. And it has been released on this great new Blu-ray from our good buddy Bill Lustig at Blue Underground. New scan, uncut, stuff in there that you may not have seen before. But anyway, this came out in 1972. I don't recall ever seeing this playing around in theaters up here, and strangely enough, I never saw Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things in theaters around here for some reason. Now, I'm not saying I saw every fucking movie that ever came out in a theater, because I didn't, but it just seemed like around that time, certain stuff might run somewhere, but then it got football to late night TV. Like, I saw Children Couldn't Play with Dead Things on one of the horror showcases. Might have been Schiller Theater later on in life when they started showing some color stuff, or it might have been just one of these little showcases like The Creep or something like that. But anyway, that showed up here, and Death Dream also showed up here, and so did Grave of the Vampire, all on weird like little spots on TV. I caught Death Dream at like 1:30 in the morning coming home after the bars closed, and it was like, what the fuck am I watching? And it doesn't really say what war is going on. It just alludes to it because it opens up with two soldiers in the jungle. One of them gets killed, the other one's standing over him, and you see him, and he gets shot, and then he falls and the credits roll. And then you go back to his parents that are basically, expecting him to come home, but no letters have come in, and then there's a knock on the door, and it's whatever officer, I guess, is designated to knock on people's doors and say, guess what, your kid died in Vietnam. So that's what happened, and the mother is not accepting this, and the father, played by John Marley, who you all know from The Godfather and other films, is like completely shocked. And the mother has got this weird thing about he's got to come home, he's got to come home. Well, then we segue to a truck driver picking up a soldier that's hitchhiking, and he goes into this diner and says, I'm going to get gets 2 cups of coffee. He goes, yeah, I just picked up this hitchhiker, and he's not saying too much. He's a soldier. I'm going to drop him off in town. And it's obvious that he's a regular in the diner. Well, they find the truck abandoned and the dead driver in it, and the dead driver had his throat torn out. Now all of a sudden Andy shows up at home. His mother's overjoyed. Of course, they're all overjoyed, but Andy is like off. And the guy playing Andy is an actor named Jim Backus, who is playing this like he's very confused, he's out there, and then he knows what he's doing, but he's completely like a loft, and he sits in this rocking chair all day going back and forth like this, which is creepy, and it's also a little bit reminiscent of one of Clark's earlier films, Black Christmas. So there is just this weird shit that, the sister wants to reintroduce him to his old girlfriend who's been waiting for him to come home, and the mother's fawning over him, and the father really thinks there's something off, and then the family doctor comes over, and before that happens, and this is like one of these scenes that like comes completely out of fucking nowhere. Andy's sitting outside, and his father decides to bring the neighborhood kids there who like falling all over him. Oh, you're a war hero, you're this, you're that. And this dog, the father's dog, this little yippy thing's barking at him and barking at him. All of a sudden, Andy reaches down and grabs his fucking dog and holds it at arm's length and is choking the shit out of it while the kids watch in horror and start crying and shit. And the look on his face is one of complete fucking anger and fury, and then he drops the fucking dog and walks away like nothing happened. So now Dad's a little fucking freaked out and shit and decides to like start packing a gun, but he has his friend, a doctor, come over and to see what he can figure out. And of course, they've already heard about this mysterious dead truck driver, so who picked up a soldier, quote unquote. So it sort of escalates from there because Andy didn't like being questioned by the doctor, goes over to the doctor and is in the house before the doctor gets home. Now all this is like really creepy fucking shit because he just shows up and it's like completely deadpan. So cutting to the chase, he kills the doctor, takes some blood out of the doctor and injects it into himself like he's mainlining heroin. So now they're set up for this big, quote, date reunion thing. They're going to a drive-in and shit. And like, now the father finds out that the doctor's been killed and all this is like going to shit. And they go to the drive-in and again, he's really aloof with his old girlfriend and stuff. And then the sister and her boyfriend decide to go to the snack bar and leave him alone, and basically he morphs into something and is like chowing down on the girlfriend when the other two get back to the car. Pops up with blood all over his face, grabs the boyfriend, starts strangling him with the drive-in speaker, then tries to run over the sister, but she gets away, but some other poor schmuck gets in the way, and you see the car going back and forth and his legs wiggling underneath it. Like I said, really creepy, fucked up shit. So in the interim, Dad uses the gun to blow his own brains out. Mom takes Andy to the cemetery where basically he had scratched on a headstone, Andy, whatever his last name was, born and died and shit like that. Now he's burying himself. And then it's like, that's the end of the fucking movie. Like, really, really fucking creepy shit. And I guess that was probably, one of the first horror, just an out-and-out horror film to address, the Vietnam War. And like I said, the cast is good. Anya Ormsby is playing the sister. Can't remember the actress that was playing the mother, but she's completely over the top. But Andy's got to come home, and John Marley's John Marley. So it was all good. Plus, John Marley and the woman who played his wife had acted in something prior, and both had been up for, I believe, supporting actor or best supporting character awards at one point. So that's Death Dream. The year after that, we got something completely fucking different. Forced Entry. I believe it's one of the first films by director Sean Costello, and if you look at, bring this in so you can see it a little bit better, this is part of the original poster art for the one sheet, but in order to get this thing in stores and on Amazon, it was originally said he was trained to kill, rape was his own idea. Now, this is a very strange and powerful film, plus very disturbing, because Harry Reams of Deep Throat fame plays this gas station attendant who's a Vietnam vet, who's basically gone completely psychotic and over the edge. And if he looks at like a crowd of people in New York City, he sees a crowd of villagers. What Costello did was he took actual Vietnam War footage and interspersed it in with, here's the crowd, and then all of a sudden they morph into this. And he sees like the police, and the police are soldiers, so you can see where he's flipping out. And basically it opens up with police sirens flashing and a pretty much fucked up, face laying on the floor body with it, like its head fucked up. So then it gets into this whole thing where he basically stalks women from the gas station by taking their addresses off their credit cards, goes into their places, beats and rapes them. Then after the rape, he's not satisfied. I didn't like this. And he stabs and kills them. Real buzz killer, shall we say. I think the first one he kills is the actress Laura Cannon, who actually posed for Playboy at one point. One of the first porn stars to actually pose in a mainstream magazine. he does her in, and then there's another one, a throat slashing. Laura's gutted, then there's a throat slashing, and he's like waiting on the fire escape. I mean, it's really fucking creepy how he stalks them. And the other thing, being this was done in '73, New York had that horrible gritty ambiance, like everything seemed to be covered with slime and filth and shit, and the film sort of emulates it. What happens is he keeps doing these killings, and then he picks up these two girls that are like too fucking stoned to know what's going on, and when he pulls the gun, they basically laugh at him, and you know they keep the laughter up, and he's telling them to stop, 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 and then eventually he blows his brains out, which is how the film opened up with, you know, him on the floor dead. Film is not a fucking erotic film at all. It was in the porn theaters. It didn't last that long, according to writer Bill Landis, and like anything with Bill, you can take with a grain of salt. The Vietnam vets that worked the live sex shows, when seeing this, would turn their back on it. It's sort of weird when you think of it, because porn theaters and, you know, whatever, I don't know, but just the whole, you know, miserable ambiance of the thing, plus, you know, the rapes are brutal, and Harry doesn't have his trademark mustache on, and Harry looks really, really fucking psychotic. In fact, from what I understand, he had a little bit of trouble getting some work after that because he was too convincing, but he never played another psychosexual role. It was always like, you know, the goofball Harry Reams from Deep Throat and Meatballs and things like that. The film disappeared. It showed up, you know, off of like, you know, because Avon, you know, people would disagree with this whole thing. They say it's not an Avon film, but it seems to have been distributed by Variety Films or something like that, which was, you know, not that Shelley Wilson had anything to do with Avon, because she actually didn't, but she had her own little distribution thing going there. So somehow it fell into that auspice of like where it played theaters under the Avon banner, but like I said, it didn't last too long. And strangely, it disappeared. Now, here's where, you know, I sort of wandered into this picture. When I was doing the 8mm, you know, madness stuff with Mike Razzo from Alternative Cinema, he was looking for stuff to put out himself, and we had a gentleman's agreement that we wouldn't bid against each other if we saw something on eBay. So I saw Forced Entry come up, and I saw his, you know, this is when they'd show who was bidding against you, and I saw his you know, ID come up. So, okay, I'm a man of my word, but I emailed him and said, you would be fucking crazy not to go for fucking broke on this film. And he goes, why? I told him, I says, nobody has this. This is the only time I've ever seen this out on, you know, a videotape was some shitty fucking print, and it's like, if this was available, you know, this was going back to, you know, we're starting with DVDs now, so if this had been available where somebody had this fucking film, somebody would have jumped on it and put it out on a DVD, but nobody had the film. So he got it, put it out. Sean Costello wrote the liners for it, and it did very well. But like I said, it's a complete fucking buzz killer, and you know, it's a hard watch indeed. So, you know, here's two films, and like, you know, they basically created the deranged, well, not so much Death Dream, because that was more of a horror thing and it was supernatural, but Forced Entry basically created, you know, that weird subgenre of the deranged Vietnam vet on a rampage films. So there's a little slice of history for you, and we'll be back. Stay safe.